is going on? All right. Am I finally here? All right. How is everyone doing? Is anyone here? Sorry, I am late tonight. Got caught up with the kids doing pizza stuff, and then I had some technical difficulties getting ready. Let me see here. I'm gonna need this if I'm gonna type anything. How's it going, Cringe McCringle? Isaiah, how are you? Yeah, I really did want to do this earlier. Am I sounding okay? I'm doing this on my phone, and I've never really done this on my phone before. Not with the new phone, anyway. All right. So, I am Aaron Archer, a 30-year toy vet. Mostly worked on Kenner and Hasbro products, Batman, G.I. Joe, and specifically Transformers. And tonight I am prepping for TFCon Toronto next weekend and pulling some stuff out that I need to get done. So how's everybody doing? Oh yeah, this one will be in Toronto for sure. Hey, Wind Charger, how are you? All right, let's see. So yeah, I'm gonna do. I don't know what exactly I'm gonna do here tonight, but this is for those of you who don't know. I take I do illustrations on old toy instruction sheets, Transformers particularly, anything on glossy paper. I do it on Lego as well. Hey, El Kevo, how are you? And so I'm going to do some of these tonight. I might not finish any, but I'm going to have some fun laying some stuff out, I think. So this is what we're looking at, this kind of thing. Some are more complex than others. Some get more details than others. And I can't believe this one's still around, to be honest with y'all. I like this one. All right, so that's the goal for the evening. Is to do some of those. And hello, Rodimus Supreme. Why is the live stream set up like a Facebook live stream or Instagram stream? I don't know. I don't know. I'm still working out the kinks, whether or not I had it set up slightly differently, but the orientation was wrong, so I had to move my arm. I might not know that there's a secret option to use, but yeah, I figured maybe start on a Ruination. That's definitely one. Cybertron Starscream, Animated Jazz. Can finish up this Armada Demolisher. Those are the ones that I pulled out specifically thinking they could be fun. But I have a little bit of everything. I got a couple things on the list that I want to get done for the show. And that would be Scorponok would be one of them. Probably another Waspinator. There's always Unicron potential. So those are the options at the moment. I think definitely think Ruination sounds fun, but that's a little more complex. I want to warm up a little bit. You know what I mean? So, I think I might do Scorponok to at least lay that out. Nice thing about these instructions as well is that they are pretty heavy duty for what they are. You can rough them up a little bit. So how I do these is very much like graffiti in a way. I just lay them out rough with a Sharpie and kind of attack it with color. The trick is, do I remember how to draw the character? And that is not always the case. For the small details, anyway. So I'm pulling up some reference, because I have a bad habit, if left to my own devices, to continue to design these guys. And why don't I just draw what is actually there? Hey T Farmers 2002, how are ya? You got that chair ready, huh? All right. So when I have to kind of visualize the overall dimensions of this thing before I start, it helps me kind of know what I'm doing. Hey, that's better. I popped out the chat so I can read it to my left, which is way better. Have I drawn Powerlinks Optimus? I must have by now, at some point. You know, another thing about most Transformers, and I don't know if this is just a thought I have or if you guys share it, but a lot of them, especially the G1 designs, and I carried this through with my mentality, I believe, they look like they're metal men wearing helmets, like they're all construction workers or whatnot. And so this guy definitely feels like that. He's like he's wearing a Roman or Spartan helmet kind of thing. You guys know I'm gonna amplify the scary details. Redesign that a little bit. And the paint covers it, so this is why it's very sketchy. Sketchy in a loose sense, not a negative. Is that light too harsh up here? Got quite a glare. Hey Patrick, how are you? Trickiest thing for some of these is just since I use these Posca pens, they only come in so many tones and shades of a color. So green is one of those colors that a minty green isn't something that I have at my disposal. I gotta figure that out. All right. I've been trying to leave the original form open. It doesn't always work out, and or the bottom form of the instruction sheet. Try to leave some of that. I've been getting better about trying not to draw up into the character illustration and name particularly. Those of you who might have some of these, I sell them on my website, archermonster.com. And some of y'all that have bought these in the past, sure, some of you can tell some of them are much bigger and take up much more of the paper. I think part of the charm is that the paper comes through. And yeah, so you can appreciate that it's an instruction sheet and not just some crappy glossy piece of paper someone found, right? You know, that's I guess how I'm looking at it. And here's a good example. Scorponok's face is kind of a patinaed bronze kind of vibe. Not quite the yellow I'm using here, but I'm gonna shade that out quite a bit by the time I'm done. This is just going to be my base coat because it is overall in the warm family. And it'll complement with the visor. Now the visor I'm kind of loosely doing because I just kind of want to undercoat, and it's just going to be part of the mosaic of colors that get put onto that to get that semi-reflected, transparent look, which is my favorite, one of my favorite parts of doing these. I'm gonna let that sit for a while so I don't cross-pollinate. So we'll come back to that one. Let's do something a little different. Yeah, I figured we'd get some bonus coverage, huh? Nothing wrong with that, right? This time we will just Let's do a classic animated jazz. I'm tired of scaring everybody every time I draw the final hero jazz, whatever we call that guy. Yeah, it is kind of jazz time. I have a long-standing commission to do that's a triptych of jazz that I don't always feel like drawing jazz, but I kind of feel like an animated guy today. Or right now. And I'm not going to do two green guys, so I'm not going to do Waspinator at the moment. One thing I always do is I do cross out the Hasbro logo to denote that this is not a Hasbro product. Not any shade being thrown. Just that's how I feel is the best way to just be clear that this is just a piece of art paper. Alright, now these animated ones are always a little weird because they are on such smaller paper. So you can't, if I'm trying to avoid this area and maybe this area, it's kind of a smaller image on these. So that's if you see them on the website, archermonster.com. These ones usually are a different price point because of that. They're just a little small. Yeah, I didn't, El Kevo, you've been with me a minute, so I appreciate you. It's something I started probably after the first couple months. So I've been doing this full out for 2 years now. At least 2 years. I think that's probably accurate. And so, yeah, I picked up different habits along the way. Gotta get in the vibe. Gotta get in the what are they doing to me? There we go. Got to get into the groove here of drawing in this style. It's kind of a movement of lines. All right, so what you guys are also watching here today is I draw often in silhouette, so I can I like to look at the shapes overall, and with that I kind of can construct this guy without too many guidelines. That is not a good way to learn, it's a good way to learn, but that is not something I recommend. You should do the proper guidelines and whatnot. But because these get covered and everything, I'm able to kind of throw it down. Let's see where we get here. Not too bad, not too bad. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls playing along, Shiro has entered the chat. his back panel should be up a little higher so that I don't cover the car up. That's the kind of adjustment I make to try to keep the vibe. Like in this one, since it's so close up, I kind of do want to capture more of the car elements or the arm elements, however you want to look at it. I don't know if it's totally needed, but it just adds a little extra. Yeah, well, I've never heard anything from good or bad from Hasbro since I left, really. So, um, I don't think I'm kicking up much dirt for them to worry about me. But I just don't. I don't need to suggest that I'm still part of that organization. So when I do these, that's another reason I just cover the logo up. It's not part of my deal to promote them necessarily, beyond what I already obviously talk about. Cat is bum rushing me here. So I draw these in kind of in a weird, or paint them rather in a almost an animated cell kind of style, where the last thing I do will be the final black, but I gotta put big shapes in that'll get knocked off along the edges. So this coloring might look weird a little bit along the way because it is not actually precise. I'm kind of putting it together like stained glass or something. You'll see what I mean in a second here. Some of these markers are getting a little, they've been used up a little bit, but I kind of like the effects that I can get in that case, which is kind of fun. I would have got a little more of the upper head in there, but it is what it is. No, it's more, honestly, it's more to differentiate me, who was a part of Hasbro and known for being part of Hasbro, to just make sure that I'm not falsely associating myself with them in their current mode, as to not suggest, it's kind of like pretending to be a cop or something. I never want to convince or have anybody think that I am still speaking on behalf of that organization, I guess. So by taking the logo off, it kind of makes me feel comfortable that I'm not trying to confuse anybody. There should be power in the communication that comes from Hasbro, right? That technically doesn't all have to be promo speak. This one's almost gone. Um, so I guess that's how I feel about it. So this is another good example. This is like a really rich purple, um, grape or something, but it's as close as I can get to a little bit of that color. I'm gonna mix it with another here. Yeah, layer by layer, these things, they're constructed as much as they're drawn. Um, yeah. Yeah, they're absolutely pulled together bit by bit. I wouldn't want to suggest it's paint by numbers at all, but it's the technique I've. There we go. Come to get used to. Yeah, this is why it's kind of like graffiti, because I'm just going for it. I'm just like, if you got a spray can out there, you got one shot, you know. Um, there's not a lot of safety net on these. I fortunately haven't had to throw away too many, um, but it does happen. Mostly because of a marker hiccup, more so than a actual problem, but sometimes the art's just not good as well. Don't let me kid you. Everything that comes out doesn't automatically win the day. Let's see what I'm gonna do now. I'm trying to spare you guys to getting dizzy, but I usually spin these around quite a bit to get the angle that I like, because my hand moves a certain way and you don't want to. I am a lefty, so there's a tendency to occasionally run across my own stuff, and that's not good. Yeah, this one's get out of here. So anybody got a topic for tonight, or are you just happy to hear me go on about the artwork? So I will be at TFCon Toronto next weekend. Looking forward to that. I'll be bringing anything that I have on the website. Be coming with me. I might not bring too many sketchbooks beyond a reasonable amount. They're heavy, and just don't need to bring a whole flea market with me. But I'll have enough, I believe. All right, now that white needs to dry before I can go back in with black anyway. So come back to this guy. Get the white off my hands. Yeah, Sharkticon does kind of have that Magneto vibe. Not intentional. I know, buddy. You got a bed right over here. Yeah, I know, right here. There you go. He's got a sweet pad that he sleeps or sits on when he's down here. Cringe McCringle. What's nice about overall with TFCon, beyond that I've done it now so many times. I like that it is the show it is. You know, um, not that it's the same every year, but it has a certain amount of consistency about it, which is great. Um, and that I think I've said it recently, but I love any convention that takes over the hotel. Some of the best memories of a BotCon would have been that kind of situation. And whoa, 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 no, thank you. Um, and so I like that aspect about it. It's consistent. You know, those of you who didn't know me back in the active Transformer days at Hasbro and those BotCons and the movie launches and everything, you know, we were really promoting the heck out of that with the fan community. And you know, it is promotion. You know, you're proud of your work and everything as a team, but you know, there was certain partners within the company that, you know, BotCon was nothing more than a promotional opportunity in a way. And me have been being a con kid, so to speak, going to comic book conventions my whole life. I knew that we could do more, or I wanted to do more, so I took the attitude of all access Aaron for that weekend, and I didn't leave the hotel if possible. I would, you know, commit myself to the reason we came. It's the chance to talk to me. You know, people were coming to hear from Hasbro, not necessarily me, but from Hasbro, and I was a spokesman for Hasbro at that time. Not anymore. So I just enjoyed that, and that was in the evening activities at a hotel bar where you've taken over the whole place. You know, it was just kind of fun that way back in those days. This has got to dry a little bit too. All right, what are people saying here? A Guinness does sound good though, Cringe McCringle, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. Do I have to, should I charge extra if it has cat connections? It's an additional upcharge. Touched by Jiro. I don't think anybody's gonna fall for that. Banana in a tailpipe. See, it's this green. It's just terrible. I'll use this one. Yeah, one of these days. Maybe I missed my opportunity. I should have done a robotic Jiro sticker. Oh my goodness, this cat is relentless. Well, Ninjatron, I didn't really start till almost 10 anyway, so you didn't miss much, or 9 anyway. No, almost. How long have we been on here? No, I've only been on for maybe a half hour. So that is it. Konbanwa. Yeah, maybe we got to get Daniel's plush connections to make a Jiro. mind him being here, but he's gonna lay in the paint. He's gonna lay in the paint. This is another way it's like graffiti. A better way to spread the paint with my finger than sometimes I use a brush, but then I gotta clean the brush. Otherwise, this doesn't dry for quite a while. Yeah, my plan is to stream tomorrow night as well, with the full extravaganza. Not necessarily drawing. All right. Although technically I probably should do a live draw tomorrow as well, just because I got stuff to get done. But there's only so much you can draw in a given period sometimes. Cat's looking at me like, are you coming at me? You're the one laying in my line of fire, buddy. Now, I gotta go in and do layers on the darkest spots so that they finally get covered. Yellow's not a good coverage color. My art people here will confess to you, like I will. Kind of got to do layers on yellow cover. But a lot of people like to use Posca like a very clean graphical sense. I am definitely more of the slightly different camp. A lot of ways we can go here. A lot of ways we can go. All right. Hey, buddy. Yeah, it's not dry enough yet. Sorry for my left-handedness here. Ninja, my plan, the current plan is that I'm coming up alone this year. The family's going to do other things. So I will be around Sunday night without issue. So if you and Goob want to go get that meal, if that's what you guys do, or any meal on Sunday night, that would be cool. Missed joining you last year. If you're doing that, and if I'm welcome. Or did the one by us close? Did I hear that? Were you guys telling me that the Swiss Chalet closed near the convention? Yeah, it's one of those things. I didn't grow up with that, obviously, but interesting tastes and tasty food, so it's kind of lingered in my palate memory. Like, oh yeah, I want to get that again someday. So I haven't mentioned that to Goober. I assume he's coming, right? And I guess the question is he bringing his special lady friend? Well, the trick with these reflections is not to go too crazy. You want to trick the eye enough, but not too much. All right, I gotta let that dry a little bit. You can see how that's coming together. Get back to this Yahoo. Whoa, what are we doing here? Sorry. My cat sat on the keyboard and it was rewinding. I'm watching live on my monitor so I can make sure the paper is aligned. Drew's been a little needy lately. I don't know. The kids are here. They're giving him plenty of love, but I come home from work and he is all over me. Wow, Weird Al in town. Too bad he can't make it to BatCon or TFCon. Special lady friend. All right, well, that ought to be good. Good chance to hang out. And again, I guess I will certainly miss the trip my family takes every year, but it opens up other opportunities, obviously, to hang out and try different stuff. So, looking forward to that. There goes the Cartoon Network logo. Smart ass. Just kidding. Alright. See, that's where you gotta let it dry. Gotta let it dry. Looks like it should be dry, but it's not always dry. really tightens all up once you get the final kind of black going on here. So I turn it to stay out of my hand way. See, I just popped my hand into the corner shoulder there, so you can see what happens. Just, you can see the blotter here. For some reason, I mean, white is thicker because it does need to cover, so it does take a little minute longer to dry when I do big blocks of area. For everybody's reference, that's what's happening there. It'll dry in smaller areas, but the bigger areas, it takes a minute. You know, I'll tell a Weird Al story since we're talking about him. Had the opportunity to kind of interact with him a couple of times. The first time I met him, we happened to be in California for a bunch of different things. I think Eric was working at Cartoon Network with Derek on the production of whatever they did and the toys and stuff. And I think I came out for a movie meeting, and because we were there, I went over to Cartoon Network. I don't think Eric traveled with me for some reason. I have weird memories of all this kind of stuff. And we went to lunch as a group. I went to Cartoon Network, so it was the whole gang. I think we went to a Brazilian styled restaurant that was just half a block down the road from Cartoon Network, which was kind of crazy, and ate a giant lunch. You know, I'm not going to go out on a limb here and say anything strange, but Derek enjoyed food. So we'd go to some nice places. So we ended up going there, and on our way back, across, you know, when we're crossing the street to go to Cartoon Network, the animation building anyway, there was Weird Al, or just Al. It's hard for me to call him Weird Al, but and he was there just waiting across the street. He had parked in a parking structure and was walking across the street because he was going into record the Wreck Car stuff for the first time. So I sat through that record. That's the only time I think I went. One of the few times I went to Cartoon Network, and definitely the only time that I think went to a recording, and it was that episode. So I met him there. Great guy, real gracious when we met him out on the street. Nice dude. Then met him again in the BotCon at the Paramount party. Got some nice pictures of him and my wife laughing, and he was just a really nice dude. We talked to him about a bunch of different things, and he was just you know, that rare kind of situation where you just don't want to be disappointed, and I was not. He was a nice dude, and deserves everything he gets. So that's my Weird Al story. Oh yeah, yeah. No, he still knew the stuff. Absolutely. He's very aware, I think, of his pop culture connectivity. I mean, he's got one of the greatest, uh, you know, known music libraries in a way, and UHF is certainly a great cult classic. Um, he's been around, since I was like 12 or 13. So he's been around our whole lives. So he's an interesting pop culture character, and I think he knows it and is appreciative of it. So yeah, his connection to Transformers, I think, is a big deal for him. Not obviously above the music and all that, but he's proud to have been part of that. I mean, that's an '80s, obviously iconic '80s moment. I still can't get over the stories that Flint and was telling about various Orson Welles things at BotCon a couple of weeks ago. I'm just so charmed by those kinds of stories of just not necessarily old Hollywood, but just when people collide, and I say that in a gentle term, but with superstardom at the end or whatever, and just what just interesting stories come out of that. Really, basically, he was doing whatever he could just to pay his bills. So yeah, I'll do this robot show. What do I need to do? Really, just interesting that way. All right, so we're getting close to the end here. On these little ones, I like to add a little bit of pizzazz. So I do a little bit of my shaky thing. Let's see. This is just inking 101. Things closer to you have a slightly thicker line. Or stroke for my digital learners. I think that is jazz. That's what we're going to finish with now. And those of you playing at home and followed, I always like to give my respects on all this animated stuff. I know I talk a lot about Eric's contribution to that process, but and certainly these toys, but they wouldn't be what they were without Derek as well. So in his kind of memory, I put the DW there because let's be honest. I like to mix and match these guys and have my own fun with them. But when you're drawing animated characters, you're swimming in that guy's pond, no matter what you do. Um, so that's how I do that. Oh man, Flint was telling stories about how he would take meetings just to go to restaurants, you know, or take jobs just because he had to keep paying his tailor to, make his suits bigger, bigger and bigger. Um, Stuff like that. Just really interesting stories about the practicality of all of that. Um, Interesting. It was all interesting. Okay. So that's jazz. Nice. Nice. 100 ninja power is all one can ask for in this world and the next. I'll put him up over here a little bit. And now this guy I'm going to start figuring out. So, those, again, this is a way I draw. I used to draw in pen exclusively for 20 plus years, probably. Um, I thought it was more expedient almost than to draw in pencil. It was one of the things I didn't like about comic books, that you kind of had to trace your stuff. Like, what if I just learn how to draw with the ink? And so what that did was train me to be comfortable making bold moves and lines. Um, this isn't how they teach you in art school, though, to do it. But whatever works for you is kind of another attitude to have. All right, what are we talking about here? Yeah, sometimes they can be charming without the line art. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. Um, are you talking like comic books in general, or these paintings? But several, God, going back 18 years now, probably longer, 20. When the when Dark Horse was doing the Conan, when it came back out, oh man, I can't believe I forget that guy's name. But the guy that was drawing it, that's what they did. They just digitized his pencils because they had a frenetic energy that was reminiscent of, Frazetta and um, all the Conan kind of mystical kind of vibe. And I think that was cool. It's one thing that I would say, like, one of the things that always kind of still bothers me at times is the comic book industry, particular. They do printing gimmicks, but they don't really like to change the format. Occasionally they'll do a horizontal book, and they've trained us to think those are weird. So, you don't get a lot of them. But they don't really, until recently, even they really haven't even changed the orientation of the graphics on the covers. It's always indentia logo, you know, on top, and where the UPC is always consistent. It's just not very risk taking at all. It's old school printing mentality. How many can we pump out? How fast? How cheap? Um, but in this ongoing difficult transition where people aren't reading necessarily as much, at least comic books, what can you do to change it up? Golly, try anything. Try anything. Let's have a little fun with these eyes. That's not gonna show up. Let that dry. I'll go back and forth a few times. Yeah, time is kind of relative. I can sit and talk to you guys about certain toy stories that I have from the 90s or early 2000s like they were yesterday. And if you asked me about stuff in the later 2000s, 2010, 11, 12, I don't have the same clarity. That's something about your early days doing something codifies in your brain in a certain way that I don't know. I think it just imprints on you more. That's why certain childhood memories linger, others don't. This is kind of like a weird Dayglow Scorponok vibe going on here. Let's make them a little more thick-necked. Yeah, I'll go in and out of these a few times sometimes. I haven't even busted out the highlighter, which is almost dead. We're gonna launch a new highlighter today. So I put new when I have multiple ones. I put an N on there. Some people see it as a Z, but it's an N. So when I get a brand new one, it's the newer, juicier one, which is helpful when I'm just grabbing at these things on my side desk here. Hello, CD Freedom. How's it going? Toys Down Under, how are you? Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know if this looks like Megatron exactly, but I was certainly imprinted on in my early Hasbro Kenner days with this, with the Beast Wars for sure. Right. So this is where I don't remember little details like, what's going on in here. So in my modern design sense, I'm like, well, that should also match these vents. I don't think it does in the toy, but that's how I would think more today. But Scorponok is one of my favorites. I obviously like monsters and not necessarily bugs, but interesting shapes, horns, and visors, and whip tails, and the different things that he brings to the party, for sure. So I have always kind of dug him. Let's see here. Ugh, contaminated. Poscas are nice, they cover and stuff, but if they get contaminated sometimes you got a problem. On a color like this, everything's shifting a little greener than it needs to be. There we go, it's working itself out. Yeah, Decepticitty. What doc was that? Was that Icons Unearthed? Yeah, we had found a artist online that initially could do covers and stuff for us in that style. They're dead. And then he ended up working on the production. But I don't know exactly which one you're talking about. I'm intrigued. All right. Pull out the big boy marker. It's go time. See, I'm a little bummed out. I covered up the Scorponok there, but it's fine on this type of one. He's still right here. Lose these neon ones a lot because all of these have colored tops, whereas this one just has a section there. So when it's upside down, sometimes I grab it thinking it's my black marker. I've never used it as my black marker, but I do grab it from time to time, and nope, don't need that one. All right, what did I pull this out for? Oh. Ooh, you guys are going on the chat. I'm out of the loop. So those of you who may or may not know, I designed this guy back in probably '03 was when I was working on it. Safe to say. And very happy with him all these years later. This guy doesn't really have a lot of highlights. He's not a blingy guy. Oh, that'd be cool if Neil came back to do some work. I sat next to him at one of my first TF cons. We had a nice, actually, one probably is my first TF con. Yeah, we had a nice time. We've actually interacted. He's interested in a version of that character I painted recently, trying to get a print or something going. I just haven't got it to him. This is where I go back and try to cover up anything that's a little too much. One more coat on it. Yeah, back in the day, the features were more priority, obviously, than things like articulation and paint. That wasn't quite in the zeitgeist yet. It was coming, but it wasn't a necessity. So yeah. But I learned how to make toys again in the Kenner era where you activate features, spring-loaded features of various types, internal, external, and the magic of the play is something that we sought to sell in more so than the characters, or the authenticity, or the posability. In some ways, calling out articulation when I started anyway was a non-starter. That was not the feature of a toy. But we've moved quite a bit from those days away from that. But if we didn't have the Beast Wars toys, we wouldn't have the articulation knowledge that we have now, that's for sure. Yeah, features. I mean, features are not a priority anymore because you're not talking to kids. The scale and authenticity and deco and replica are more important, or cool guy stuff. Those are going to be more important than spring-loaded projectile launchers in most cases, or things that don't help pose, the character stand in a pose, because it's got some overriding feature that's more important. So, what you do is you see that in the smaller, younger age toys. You'll see that in Imagine Next, things like the Rescue Bots, that style of product. They do it for everything now, Jurassic Park. But that's where you'll still find feature play. But after that, it gets tricky. But everything, I like to think everything does have a cycle, and what's old will be new again someday. So there very much could be a point where all that stuff comes back. I don't know if kids come back, but the fun of just crazy stuff you can do with toys certainly should come back. A sense of fun. You know, if you're only buying toys to put them on a shelf or never open them, you know, again, I made toys for kids, so um, with the intention of making them for kids, but if they're well designed and thought of, they weren't designed to stay in the box. We can make much simpler products if that was the goal. Simpler products faster even, but that wouldn't be ideal. All right, what do we want to do? Not sure I'm ready for that. Let's go into the folder, see what we can see. All right, I think it's time for another zombie cliff jumper. What do you say? What do you say? Well, I'll tell you, the long term cycle, just sniffing what came before, it will eventually eat its own tail. You know, you gotta breathe various forms of life into these brands if you want them to have a next gen, so to speak. And I think I can call that out fairly easily on the some of what happened with G2. You know, you can't just keep offering the same product in different colors and without investing a little bit more. And Beast Wars proved that, and then Armada and Unicron Trilogy proved that, and Animated proved that. Prime was a little bit different, as I've said, but if they want to sell market toys, then that cartoon will do that, I guess. We'll see. Well, that's the charm of Cliff Jumper, really, is that he's a bait and switch character. He's there, and then he's not. See, this one I'm going to cover the car up right away, just by the nature of where the details of the character are. It's been a minute since I've done a zombie cliff jumper. I enjoy doing the zombie cliff jumper as much as I like to do the Fallen on Fire. Well, I will tell you, there is an epidemic. I mean, I'll just talk very plainly. Uh, None of these companies want to pay for top talent, or they don't want to pay top dollar for top talent for very long. And so it doesn't matter what industry you're talking practically. And it's an issue. It is an issue for sure that they don't, they don't want to pay certain writer prices, or they don't want to pay certain voice actor prices. And you get maybe, the next generation instead of the established generation. I don't want to disparage anybody we're all on our path to build our skills and all of that. But there's superstars, and then the next generation, and I think I think there he is. Um, and so if companies don't want to pay for that depth because they just don't value it, it's going to hit. Is it really going to get a higher ratings because they hired this guy or that woman? In their minds, probably not, which is sad, but it's how they kind of view it, it seems. All right. What was this toy originally in? What did we call that? Generations? Bumblebee from Generations? Or Classics? Did we call it Classics? I guess maybe we call it Classics. We pitched so many names over the years. And they're all variations, right, of cyber and trans and trans tech and all that stuff. It gets a little cloudy in my mind. Cyber first, cyber that, energon, various energons. Yeah, energon I think does have a certain amount of blocky shoulders. I would kind of agree with that. I don't know if I've done a G1 zombie cliff jumper. But that is going to be my preferred fate for cliff jumper for all eternity. No doubt. He dies and then gets abused. That is my preferred canon going forward. So, for those scoring at home, I can say positive things about Prime. It is not all negative. What do we think? Ooh, spider! Yep, I like the Energon Decepticons too. I always took a lot of kind of overall. I guess I took a lot of overall credit for those. Like Eric did the blocky guys, and I did the Decepticons. But I realized recently, looking through some old stuff, I laid out a lot of Decepticons, and Eric finished all of them practically. Maybe not every one of them, but a lot of them. A lot. All right, let's have some fun on this. Well, evil, scary zombie. You bring up a lot of good stuff here. I feel like the new toys are slowly lacking in the idea of seeing a cool vehicle on the road and trying to turn that into a robot. Um, there's certain elements of the magic that get kind of old, um, unless you're trying something new, and maybe that's a little bit of what you're experiencing. Maybe I keep thinking about um, the Metal Card Bot series that was showed at BotCon, and just how the designs are fun, and that in itself is charming. Because they're not trying to be, you know, cool vehicle designs. They're like fun and appropriate vehicle designs, and for what they're trying to do and the market they're trying to hit. Um, so um, I think I it's been in the zeitgeist a long time here. This Transformer, certainly the post movie generation. A concept gets it might not be as fun to see a car transform into the robot here pretty soon. Gonna have to bring it back to beasts or something else. Well, Toys Down Under, yeah. I mean, they might not click for you because they're just repetitive, and you lived through it once and you were charmed by it then. And yeah, we can have nostalgic bursts of love, and that's great. Um, but I don't need to be endlessly. Let's take the any version of the G1 reissues, right? When they first started coming out, it was like, oh wow, I haven't either. You had kind of a couple things people resonated with. Either, oh wow, I had this as a kid, I haven't seen it in years. This is really cool. I'm buying this. There were people that, you know, were like, oh, this is my preferred version of Transformers with diecast and whatnot. Um, and it was kind of charming at first, right? Because it's like, oh, I can get Optimus and Starscream and some of these classic characters that I love. But then, once you start looking at Six Shot and some of the others, it's like, are we just putting out the 1984-85 line again? And is that really good for the brand? Once it becomes its own collection, in a way, you start to run the risk of polluting something in the memory banks and the love of why we do this stuff, why people spend so much time and money and to be a part of this world, right? So that's kind of my thought process on that. Let me see something here. All right. Sorry. Got lost in my own thing. So let's see here. So if you want to see this artwork before I take it to the show, it'll be on the Instagram. I'll probably put some of it up on the shop. Um, if you're interested in buying art, please let me know. Over the next few weeks, I need to get a lot of stuff done with the artwork, so I'm looking for commissions and whatnot, particularly after the con, but I still got the sketchbooks. If you're interested in that, where they are full of this kind of artwork. So check that out too if you're new and or vibing on what's going on. That is the chairs getting moved around upstairs. Yeah, I mean, any brand has to go through this process of, are you just a nostalgic brand? And like, I mean, it begs the question, right? All the time. It's worth kind of delving into. But is G1 the real Transformers that you have to keep going back to? I mean, you can't discount its merits, but is it more than that? And if you just promote a thin version of it, basically movie and then the 80s, there's a certain point where that's just kind of old stuff, old designs, old stuff. And yeah, it has an effect over time, just like any of us. Even myself, in my 50s here, I still look at the 12-inch GI Joe and I go, oh, look at that old crap. That's what happens. Like, things change, and if they don't change, you're eventually going to be like looked at as old crap, and that is not a good place to be. Yeah, you can also, what is old is new, but it can only be new for so long again, because the tail comes back and snaps it, because you get into the nostalgic stuff, and I think it's human nature, kid nature particularly, to want to find your own thing. And if you perceive some of these brands as your dad's brands or your grandpa's brands or your older brother's brands, sometimes traditionally there had been a tendency to, find your own brand. And that's kind of where you see new opportunities pop up. In the 80s it was Turtles. It's like, anyway, because I lived through a lot of this nostalgia remake stuff and how Hasbro handled G.I. Joe and Transformers particularly. And it's a tough balancing act. Because what's good for new markets might, quite be the contrary for what the old market wants or expects. Is probably a better way to say it. Yeah, El Kevo, I ran into that along the way too, where tastes change, and I think there's kind of a remake in every generation of every popular thing. And what I mean by that is like it almost feels like there are you know, 15 really cool concepts that we all like, alien invasion, single alien invasion, space opera, hero of the night, some of these kinds of things, hero out of time or out of place. Um, and I think they just keep getting recycled into different uh, updated visions in a way. I mean, here's a hot take. Is 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 there a difference between John Wick and Batman? I mean, there is, but in the why the fan base exists, a powerful do-gooder that kind of lives in the shadows, ultimately, you know, unbeatable, um, has a certain moral code, has a cadre of friends that can help. He operates as that kind of anti-hero, and there's always one of these kinds of stories out and about. Um, oh, poor cliff jumper. Didn't know what the Decepticons were gonna do. Watch me fix my biggest mistake here. Yeah, there's elements of. I mean, the hero's journey is certainly a great roadmap. Um, I think it's been expanded upon in some modern ways, but yeah, all this stuff comes down to the kinds of stories we want to tell ourselves. That there are good guys out there that can kick the shit out of the things that scare us, or that there is a shining knight out there that'll come and rescue us when we need that. That's another type of story. Um, the stranger from away, can you trust him? That can be handled a lot of different ways, whether it's culturally or nationality stranger or stranger to the planet. Um, Iron Giant and things. So yeah, you end up with the same core concepts being retold in their various modern vernaculars. That's where everything old is new again. And, I hate when people say, there's no new stories. And they're not wrong, but I feel like it's a cop out or something. But there are a lot of things that operate on those several stories that get our human nature covered. Okay. How we liking Zombie Cliff Jumper here? Yo, Cato. Thanks. Me and a group of dudes, a guy named Wayne Losi and a few others, Steve Bono to some degree, um, we sat around and really did build philosophies around some of this stuff and try to understand the kid in a emotional way, well beyond market research could ever give you. It was more our own personal research, but we talked about it and such. So I do have strong, unproven, but tested, I guess, or I've seen them in action. So they're my theories. But yeah, I probably have some former bosses that would tell you I'm pretty good in rhetorical debates, and not good for them. So that's funny. When I would get on my logic horse, I have told you all at different times that I would use it to break down stupid corporate logic. So yeah, they got tired of my rhetorical things from time to time. No doubt about that. Well, I'm so tired of them trying to just do the old thing again rather than trying to be better or more interesting. Or we just like the casinos and now sports franchises and toy companies. You no longer have business people leading the companies, and business people care about business. They are unemotional about, is it cool? Is it nostalgic? Is it better than last year? All they want to do is put stuff out and get the sales reports, right? And therefore they don't go the extra mile. They don't have any interest in the extra mile. They don't often have tolerance for people who want to go the extra mile. And if that extra mile costs more money or time, then it's not even worth it to them. And so it is very much easier for them to just see the world as what was successful or what is currently successful and how can we copy it, or how can we just bring that back and capture that excitement again. And they're not trying to take risks. They never intended to make creative things. They didn't go to school for production or design or engineering or entertainment. Often they went for business, and so you get a loggerhead there, particularly if they're particularly business oriented. And it's just easier to do what has come before. That's like an asset they know how to sell, like Tide or Nutella or whatever. Um, so it's really unfortunate because if you don't have passionate people making those decisions for the intrinsic reasons these things get made in the first place, entertaining kids, being nostalgic or referential to a beloved franchise. Um, if you don't want to do that, then you're in the wrong business. And it's weird that all these businesses, it's better to make money than to be successful in a way. It's cut the nose to spite the face. They don't like weirdos, and they don't like people who care too much or want to get pedantic about, well, that character really shouldn't XYZ because that breaks the. They don't care. They're not into it. And that's a bit of the problem. They're not going to spend money they don't need to spend, and therefore there's a lack of uh, that sense of newness or fun that you might have experienced in Armada or years past of the unexpected showing up. Everything's very tactical, right? Every show has to have Megatron, Optimus, Starscream now. They can't change the designs, or they're very, very not formulaic, but very traditional, often. Um, I often say I got to rebuild the house. It's easier to rebuild the house than try to keep it standing for 50 years. Um, the old house standing. So they're living with a lot of that as well. Hope my ramblings are kind of making sense. Do you think Bobby Vala could ever get Action Force into a position where it becomes a real G.I. Joe replacement? That all comes down to, business and money. And if, I don't know if there's been bridges burned or whatever. I know Bobby has a strong opinion about how Hasbro handles its business. I don't know if that's, something somebody would want to deal with him about, but, it'd be about money. And, just because, you have the G.I. Joe license, that'd be a big one. Doesn't mean success either, but, those things could happen. Again, if they're all about, if Hasbro is, which what it looks like to me, so this isn't something I know, but, looking to be more of a licensing house, working with, Funko and Loyal Objects and Super 7 and Lego and Mattel. Um, and if it's easier to have money come in than output products and have a whole staff and design people and sculpting people and photography people and copywriter people and so on and so forth. I mean, it takes an army to make any item. When you have QA and sign-offs and shipping and casting and paint shop, and I mean, there's a reason. It's hard. There's a lot to do. But if you don't want to pay all those people, people in the mailroom, the sculptor, then just let some other company do it. Maybe a company like a Bobby Valaverse would want that, but that's it's also big money to try to secure that kind of license and commitments. So it may not be what a smaller company even wants to do. Let's see here. Well, Action Force is, kind of, it's not replica, but it's certainly, shelf pose kind of collector line. You're not playing, with those, just like you're not playing with Four Horsemen items. Uh, you wouldn't want to drop it necessarily, not for fear that it would break, just the expense and the, what it represents. So, tricky. It's not, to your point, it's not toyetic in the classic sense. It's articulated well, it's sculpted and painted very well. Presented in the boxes fine, Um, but yeah, I mean, there's no real play value, even though he puts a lot of effort into the vehicle. Um, it holds a bunch of figures, but it's not a classic vehicle. Action fleet kind of, it's going to shoot a bunch of stuff and transform and into another type of vehicle, so on and so forth. So, buddy, there's nowhere for you. It's all markers up in here. You know, I think again, like we've been at this since 2007. The GI Joe / Transformer movies and Paramount and everything, and it's like I feel like it's too little, too late. Like why didn't we have all that planned back then in a way for GI Joe Transformer crossovers? You know, they jammed all those movies out pretty quick. Um, and used up the goodwill, I guess is one way to say it. Like, you know, fool me once or entertain me once. Well, you have to do something very special to get me back. I think Transformers 1 proved that, unfortunately. So I don't know. I don't know if I need a G.I. Joe Transformer movie right now, you know? Because just everything's got a bad taste in our mouths still. Particularly, like, you're not going to give me a Transformers 2, but you're going to give me a G.I. Joe. Like, I don't know. How can that be easier? Transformers with teeth is always a funny one. Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, Mr. Beast is more popular than, you know, some things. So, yeah, that's like where the market goes. But I don't know if Space Jam's going to do it for anybody. Did we lose Ninja? So, all right, I'm getting a little bit towards the end of my creative sense here. So not bad. Got three of these done. Actually, I'm gonna mess up an eye here. There. Now we can feel bad for him. He's got one emotional eye telling us he's dead inside. It's almost like you can't tell if he's a zombie or he's suffering from a bad case of cosmic rust. But Let's give him the eyebrow. Little acknowledgement of old Dwayne on Prime. So there we go. I got a little purple. Need to shadow the top of the eye anyway. All right. I will be live tomorrow night. Check out archermonster.com if you want to look at this art and see what's for sale. Check out Aaron Archer Official on the Instagram to see my daily posts, mostly daily. But this was fun. Sorry I couldn't read everything as I was drawing, but pretty cool to see everybody here. Thank you. We can continue this conversation tomorrow if we'd like. And that's what's going on. So I appreciate everybody. Have a good holiday if I don't see you tomorrow for the Americans. And I will see you all. All right. I appreciate you and thank you. I just got to figure out how to turn my phone off. There we go. All right, everybody. Thanks.